Just like that, the bye week's over, Rube.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like an extra long bye week because of the Monday night game. So it's been a nice break, but I'm ready for some football again.
It was nice watching football this weekend, though.
It was great.
I enjoyed it. What stood out to you most?
I guess the fact that the NFC isn't going to let the Eagles run away with this thing. I think that's the thing. You know, you see the Lions win a shootout and Dallas right back to scoring a ton of points. The 49ers with a huge win in Jacksonville. And like the Eagles aren't going to get any help, and kind of knew that. But if some games went a different way, they would have had a lot more breathing room going into this stretch against Kansas City and Buffalo and the Niners. Not that Buffalo looks like world beaters at this point. Josh Allen, man, what's happened to him? I mean, he's always been prone to turnovers, but that was awful. But in any case, if the Eagles are going to get that number one seed, they're really going to have to work for it.
Yeah, that's certainly true. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast, by the way. We're presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We're both back. Even though we had pods for you guys last week, we did a good job. I was proud of us making sure we had pods on Tuesday and Thursday to keep the schedule alive. It felt good.
Dave's big on order. He needs things to be just so every week. So
is that true? I guess that's true.
Yeah, it's pretty true.
Yeah, it's pretty true. Yeah, I can't argue that. Yeah, you're right though about the NFC. I mean, and it's funny because I think the team that stands in their way the most for the number one seed is the Lions, just based on their record and their upcoming schedule. But to me, the Lions aren't the team that stands in their way overall, like when you're talking about coming out of the conference.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I mean, when you look at the Lions' schedule and the fact that they only have 2 losses and, they're a good team and Goff's playing at a high level, but I don't look at them as the second best team in the conference. I'll tell you what, if you're the number 2 seed, you end up going into Ford Field for the NFC Championship game, you feel better about that than going into Dallas or into San Jose or something. But obviously, you'd rather have the number 1 seed. But I still think the Niners and the Cowboys are the teams that the Eagles are going to have to. I don't know, they beat the Cowboys, they're going to play them again. The Niners are coming up, but to me, those are the 2 teams that scare me the most. Detroit is, I guess, mathematically, if you look, and their schedule is really easy. That's why I thought that game Sunday was really important, because if they won that, which they did, a real shootout back and forth, it's going to be. I mean, their road to potentially 13 wins is pretty easy.
Yeah, easier than the Eagles. And the Eagles have 1 game on them right now. The Lions are 7-2. The Eagles are 8-1. But here's the Lions' opponents: Bears, Packers, Saints, Bears, Broncos, Vikings, Cowboys, Vikings. Now, the Cowboys game at the end is going to be tricky. Those Vikings games look tougher than I expected.
And now Denver looks – that's a challenge now. They're playing well. Russell's playing well.
But it's certainly not the schedule the Eagles have. The interesting thing is, like, the next few games, the Eagles' schedule is much tougher. But those last 3 games can be really exciting because the Eagles have the Giants twice and the Cardinals, and the Lions have Vikings, Cowboys, Vikings.
Yeah, it's interesting. They both have – I mean, there's like a similar pattern of playing a division team twice in the last 3 weeks. But and the Vikings are – I mean, try to figure them out. They get a quarterback who doesn't even know the guy's names. He's playing really, really well. So yeah, every time you try to figure it out, you're like, well, this isn't going to happen. And then you're like, well, this team sucks. And they're like, actually, they're pretty good. It's really tough to do it, and that's why it's so much fun. I mean, I don't know if there's a league that's less predictable or less linear. Like, who you are at the beginning of the season is just completely different than who you might be at the end of the season, and that makes it really tough to kind of figure this whole thing out.
I was thinking about that last night watching the Broncos-Bills game. I'm like, this is the defense that gave up 70 points earlier this year. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, and even you look at Miami since then, they've come back down to earth. If they played again next weekend, who knows? Denver might win that game.
Wouldn't that be something?
I mean, they won't unless it's in the playoffs. But man, Russell Wilson. I mean, I didn't think he still had it in him, but he's playing really well. I mean, some of those weird shot put passes and on like 3rd and 12, he's like shot putting the ball to guys I never heard of, but he made it work. I hate seeing games decided on penalties, but that's where we are. And that's the other thing that stuck out to me watching football weekend was there's just too many penalties. And it's like you can't even, like you even hear announcers like after a big play, it's like, it's like, well, there's no flags. Yeah. Oh, there's, it's like,
it is funny. It's like the phantom flags get me now. Because it's like you watch a big play and you're like, wait. Even like players trying to celebrate, there's that moment where they're really hesitant to celebrate because they don't want to look like fools if there was a penalty and they got to just do it all over again.
Especially big returns because there's a penalty on every return.
Yeah.
Like every return. And you can't even play pass defense because they're just going to call DPI and everything. And it's too much. It's like, I don't know what the numbers say. I have to look up what, if there's more penalties, but it's tough. It's tough to watch sometimes when these guys are just looking for stuff to call.
Yeah. In terms of the NFC, we mentioned the 49ers. I thought that was a huge win for them over the Jags. When they have all their players, they're really tough. We saw what happens when they're missing some of those key guys, but they get Debo back, they get Trent back, and all of a sudden they look like the same team again. Yeah,
I thought that was going to be a good game. I mean, Jacksonville's been playing well. It was down there in Jacksonville. That was a real statement win for them. And, they're coming to Philly soon. And, that's going to be a huge challenge. They're really good.
Yeah, they are. Only thing, CJ Stroud is amazing. I know we're talking NFC, but watch him go and beat a Joe Burrow-led Bengals team.
Yeah.
That's really impressive. I know people are talking about him deserving to be the MVP race. He does. He deserves to be in the talk.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I thought he was going to be good at some point, but he's better than I ever imagined, a lot quicker than I imagined.
It is funny, though. Sometimes you just know right away. You see, like 3 weeks into the season, you're like, oh, he's really good.
Yeah.
He's probably the only better rookie this year than Jalen Carter.
Fair. Yeah. Who's the last Eagle that you felt that way about? After just a couple games, this guy's going to be really good. I mean, I guess Jalen Carter's
Carter, yeah.
Before this year.
That's interesting. I'm not going back that far. Because it was kind of like a confirmation bias, but watching Devontae early on, it was like, oh, he's really good.
Yeah.
Even in practice, it was clear that he was just a really good player.
Right.
And I think that's a position that lends itself more to showing out in practice, but it was clear he was very good right away.
Yeah, I was going to say Reed. I thought, I mean, maybe not after the Packers game. It was like, well, that's just one game, but he played those 4.5 games for CJ GJ, and it's like, yeah, this guy's got something, and he does. He's played really well. But it's funny because sometimes, you don't want to get carried away in training camp like this guy looks great, but you trust your instincts, and a lot of times you're right.
Yeah. We also
and vice versa also.
Who?
Vice versa. That's not a name of a player. It's just the opposite.
What position would vice versa play?
Vita Vea, vice versa. He'd probably be
he'd be a defensive end, and he'd run T stunts with Vita Vea.
Yeah, I turned on. I had to run out for a minute, and I got back. I put on the red zone because the early. Well, I forget what the early game was, but put on the red zone, and the first thing I heard was, "Wow, Vita Vea really took it to Andre Dillard on that one."
Oh, I saw that snap. That was a bad snap for Andre. They had Vita lined up outside, which is wild, and he just overpowered Andre.
He did, but it happens.
Andre's having some ups and downs,
and he does that to a lot of to really good players too.
Yeah, we also didn't mention the Seahawks one. So you had the 49ers, Cowboys, Seahawks, and Lions won. The Seahawks, to me, are not with those other three teams, but they're a good team too.
Yeah, Gino's Gino's kind of following up last year with another good year, and he's a great coach. I thought Washington might win that game. They're good enough to be competitive, but not good enough to win.
They need a new coach.
Yeah,
I like Ron Rivera. They need a new coach.
Yeah, I like Ron a lot. They need a new coach. There's no question. I wonder if it'll be Eric Bieniemy. I hope so.
Maybe. I mean, they can't keep doing this.
You know why I hope it's Eric Bieniemy, so I can rerun my story from Arizona, from Scottsdale. I think we were in that day.
Fighting Jonathan Gannon's won. They
did. They got their quarterback back. Kyler Murray looked like the Kyler Murray of old, and you have a Hall of Fame coach, and this is what happens. Yeah.
Speaking of quarterbacks, and we'll get the Eagles stuff. We have a bunch of Eagles stuff, actually. I should mention we're going to go through position by position in a little bit and kind of break down the first half of the season before we look ahead. But Carson Wentz back in the league since the last time we talked.
The guy in Indy is now the guy in LA. Good for him. I was starting to wonder. I didn't think he'd get a job. I mean, the talent, I know the last couple of years have been, especially last year, have been shaky. But I mean, you got a guy who's been an MVP candidate in the prime of his career. And it was just a matter, I think, to me, it was a matter of the personality, making sure that meshed in the locker room, making sure his motivation was still there. And I think that's been a big challenge. I mean, he's got a good arm. He's a good quarterback. It's just been, I mean, even that 2 years ago with the Colts, I mean, he wasn't awful. I mean, I think he did finish with 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So I don't think it's ever really been about his talent. It's been about, who is he? Where is he in his career? What, how much does he want this? And I guess the Rams were secure in the feeling that he's doing this for the right reasons. He didn't get any money. Contract.
No, they're going to pay him.
Well, no, they're going to pay him. He's not volunteering, but it's not, it's not a big contract. Look, I got no problem with Carson. I hope he does well if he does play, and he's backing up a guy who's 35, maybe. Mm-hmm. So, we'll see. Wouldn't it be ironic if Stafford gets hurt late in the season and Carson comes in and rallies the Rams to the Super Bowl? But I don't think that's.
I don't like those chances, but
role reversal. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he plays. We'll see how it goes. I have no ill will for Carson. It's been a unique career.
Yeah. The Rams are really cornering the market on those quarterbacks from the 2016 class, huh?
That's right. Yeah.
It's like chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream.
Yeah. So, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I couldn't believe the Jets didn't sign him.
That was really surprising.
What are you doing, Joe? You can't keep trotting Zach Wilson out there.
No.
He's losing them football games. This is too good of a team. They're going to have a mutiny on their hands pretty soon.
I know. I mean, with that defense, and they have some weapons too, but with that defense, man, you just have an average quarterback in there. It's a 10-11 win team.
Yeah.
Just with no other changes, just one position. Maybe more. I mean, that defense is legit, and they're fun to watch.
They have to just be miserable every time they watch that offense play. Like, I guess we'll go back on the field and try again.
It's not even the offense, it's the quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not like they have elite weapons, but they have enough weapons to I don't know what they're thinking. I like reading the New York papers after on a Monday morning. Just they're
wasting the season. And if Rodgers comes back in December, I want a full-fledged investigation on what the heck this guy is doing. How is that even in the realm of possibility?
Well, when you immerse yourself in darkness, anything's possible, Dave. And I've started every week I sit in the darkness for 3 days now. And it's been good for me.
Yeah. I've enjoyed that time too because you're not calling me.
I still, my phone still works.
Can't see it.
I'm still on Slack all the time.
All right, let's talk about the Eagles a little bit. 8-1 football team, best record in the NFL. Tough stretch coming up, obviously. But before we look ahead to that stretch, let's look back. And I did my grades, my midterm grades, and I don't like regrade. I know a lot of people do that, but I grade each position weekly. So I just go through and get the average of those grades. And it's always interesting because, like, whenever we think about trying to give a grade to a position, like Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts has played so well recently that like he's an MVP candidate. You'd be like, yeah, he's an A. But there were some shaky games early in this season. When I averaged it out, he came out to a B player, which is obviously not the way we think of him. But it wasn't that long ago we were asking, like, oh man, is this guy going to turn it around this year?
Have you thought about using a new grading system?
No, because like you average out. Like that's how grades
but
work.
Do you think there's something to be said for grading on a curve? Like, compare the last 5 weeks with the first 3, that kind of thing?
Sure, but I mean, this is not a talk about my grading system. This is a talk about the player. I mean, I understand that.
Just talking about the grading system.
I know, but like if all games are equal, that's the way it averages out. I know not all games are equal. I don't know how else I would weight them.
But I guess just look at if I was just looking at Jalen's season, I'd say he's had an A season. So I would think you'd feel the same way. So if he has a B grade, then I'm just saying maybe there's a better way to do it.
No, but it's a reminder that this team is 8-1, but they have not been great in every game, and there are reasons to look at this team and think they have room to improve a lot of areas.
Yeah, but I don't think that's one of those areas.
Not right now.
Okay. All right. Anyway,
he's been an A player the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I would say even for the last 5 weeks.
Okay.
But anyway,
doesn't like erase the way he played earlier in the year.
No, but they won those games too. So, but anyway.
Yeah, but there's winning and then there's the standard.
The standard is the standard.
The standard is the standard.
We don't have any standards on this podcast.
No.
I really like the way he's played, especially since the injury, when he's obviously been limited what he can do movement wise, not just rushing, but just moving around the pocket. He couldn't have done this a couple of years ago. His decision making has been so accelerated, and his diagnosing what defenses are doing. He's able to stand back there and get rid of the ball quick and find an open guy. And on those rare occasions he has to take off, he knows where the sticks are and he's finding his way there. I really like the way he's playing.
What do you make of the fact that he's playing so much better after the injury?
Yeah, it's almost like it's forced. I think it's forced Brian Johnson to change the way he's calling plays. It's forced him, obviously, to focus on being on the pocket. Maybe he has less to think about. It's not, should I throw or run here? It's who's open. Maybe that's all subconscious, but there's no 2 ways around it that he is playing better since the injury. It's kind of forced him to be a really, really efficient pocket passer. And, he wasn't, even before the injury, it's not like he was, killing it with the running plays. I mean, he wasn't. So it's really eliminated a lot of really bad running plays. I mean, how many times do we see Jalen on like 3rd and 7 take off and get 2 yards? So we're not getting that. And now he's thrown for 8 yards on those plays. So there's definitely something there.
Now, is this something like what happens if his knee gets healthy? Which is obviously we want his knee to get healthy. Everyone wants his knee to get healthy.
I think he should stop getting treatment, stop seeing the trainers, and just keep hobbling around and throwing for 4 touchdowns every game, 72%.
I don't like that plan.
Well, if his knee gets healthy, you hope that this has all been something that they've learned from and learned how efficient he can be and still have that in his back pocket, that ability to move, which he does now to a lesser extent. But, if I'm Brian Johnson and I see the way he's playing, that's how I want him playing. And if he's back to running for 6 yards a carry, that's fine, but it doesn't have to be 17 times a game. It could be 4 times a game.
Yeah, I think they're missing just the threat of it overall in the run game.
Maybe, but it doesn't – I don't see that hurting the offense.
Well, I think it hurts the offense when you look at the run game. I don't think they've been running the ball as effectively as they would like.
Yeah, but that started before the injury.
I agree. I don't think it's all causation, but I think it has hurt them a little bit.
Maybe a little bit. What do you think it is? And that maybe that can transition. I don't know if running backs are next.
Yeah, running backs are next.
But
well, I don't think it's like all on the running backs either. I don't think it's all one thing. I think it's a bunch of different issues. And according to Nick Sirianni, there's not an issue at all. We talked to him before we broke for the bye week, and he pushed back against the idea that the running game has been ineffective, and I don't really understand that. I think it's pretty clear they haven't been as good running the football.
Yeah, especially trying to close out games. I mean, that's been their bread and butter.
Yeah.
It's not really about the average as much as are you effective doing it when you need to do it. I think it's a few things. I think it's the Jalen effect. I think it's not having Cam Jurgens at right guard for 5 games. And I also think DeAndre Swift maybe isn't making the right cuts or seeing the holes, or I just don't think he's been just hasn't been as good as he was earlier in the season. I think part of it's play calling, where if you run the ball 3 times in the first half, it's tough to have success. I think some of it is personnel, where it's like 20 straight carries of Swift and then like 4 carries of Gainwell, where I'd like to see it mixed up a little more, maybe a little more Boston Scott. Hopefully he's back Monday. So yeah, I think it's a bunch of factors combined. But I mean, they have the personnel to do it. So it's going to be an interesting. I think they need to do it to be good teams. I mean, you see what happens when they can't close out games. They're really putting themselves in jeopardy of giving games away late. Instead of those long drives we used to see to finish games, and the other team wouldn't even get the ball back. Yeah, they need to get back to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about Swift a little bit. I don't think he's been as good as he was early in the season. I still think he's their best runner by far. But it is funny. Like, I went through the snap counts this week from the first half of the season. We forget that Kenny Gainwell was the lead back in week 1.
Yeah.
Like by a long shot, and he gets hurt. If Kenny Gainwell doesn't get hurt in week 1, how long does it take for DeAndre Swift to win that job?
It's a great question. Yeah, I don't know. He had one
that's
carry.
Just an evaluation by the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's them trusting a player too much. And I like Kenny Gainwell. I think he deserves a role in the team, but I mean, anyone watching during training camp realized that DeAndre Swift was the more explosive player.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think certain coaches get attached to certain players for various reasons. Every coach, I've never seen a coach. I mean, Jim Johnson, God bless his soul. I mean, the best defensive coach I've ever seen. I mean, he was so attached to Sean Considine. He wouldn't take him out of the starting lineup no matter what happened. Because Jim really liked smart guys who knew the defense, knew it could play every position, and he did. He just wasn't very good. Every coach has that kind of guy, and that Kenny Gainwell seems to be Nick's guy.
Yeah, it's been a little strange, honestly. What do you make of Swift, though? Do you think he can get back on track? Because early in the year, we're talking about like this guy might finally be the reason Howie pays the running back, and I don't think that's the case anymore.
That column didn't do DeAndre any favors. As soon as I wrote that, maybe Howie needs to sign this guy. He's averaging like 2.4 yards per carry since then. I don't know. I mean, there's certainly no reason to think that way now. I mean, I need to see a lot more from him. Those 2 back-to-back 100-yard games are way in the rearview mirror, and I don't think he's been awful. at times, but yeah, I do think mixing it up would help him. It would help the offense. Sometimes I just think they're too predictable in the run game. I don't know what to make of him. I don't know exactly who he is, and I know they need him to be more like the back he was early in the season.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe he's not capable of carrying the load in that way. I don't know.
He's never done it. I mean, he's never averaged, I think, more than 10, 11 carries a game. He's obviously way above that. So something to keep an eye on. And it'll be interesting to see what the running back position and the reps and the snap counts look like coming out of the bye. Because that's something, no matter what Nick says about we're running the ball great and this 20-yard pass play was actually a running play, so our stats would have been so much better. That was a 20-yarder to Swift. It was a nice play. It was a pass play. But I'm sure that's one of the things they were looking at when they self-scouted over the bye. So be interesting to see what it looks like coming back.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that. That's one of the big questions to me.
Yeah,
going into the second half of the year is like what changes in the run game? Can they get it back on track?
Yeah.
Let's talk about receiver a little bit. AJ Brown's pretty good.
He's having a good year.
Yeah, all right.
He has a pretty good chance at 1,000 yards. Oh, he already has 1,000 yards.
He's been unbelievable. Devontae Smith has been very good. He hasn't been perfect. There have been some moments where he's dropped some passes, a little uncharacteristic, but overall, you're not worried about the top two guys. To me, one of the bigger questions is who ends up being the third receiver on this team in the second half of the year?
Yeah, I mean, Quez is eligible to come back. We've seen him practice or off to the side. You have OZ, who came in with a pretty good resume, and then you have Julio now.
Who also came in with a pretty good resume.
Yeah, that's fair. My money's on Julio.
I wonder if he can play that much.
Yeah, I do too. But I think he could be the third best guy just playing 20 snaps.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating to see how it breaks down. What do you make of Quez? Do you think he comes off IR?
Well, he's another guy. He's another one of Nick's pet guys. So,
yeah.
I mean, I don't really see the reason for it.
You end up in a little bit of a roster crunch because how many receivers are you going to have on the roster? You have AJ, Devontae, Olamide, Julio, Britton Covey. That's 5. Yeah, Quez, that's 6 receivers on the roster.
Yeah.
Which you can have 6, but you got to find that spot.
Yeah, you're going to have to be light somewhere else where it's probably not worth it to be light to have Quez Watkins up. I was really, honestly, I was looking forward to seeing him because 2 years ago, he was a pretty effective guy, and we haven't seen that player in so long. I think I'm kind of out of patience to wait to see him. I mean, because he hasn't. I mean, he was costing him games last year. It wasn't just like he wasn't catching passes; he was costing him games.
Sure.
And I don't really see the reason to keep trying. To just keep trying to. What's that Hooter song, Blood from a Stone? I just don't see it with Quez. And, I know he's fast, but he could probably outrun, Julio by 10 yards in 100, but I'd rather see Julio out there.
Yeah, and I think that will be the Eagles' argument for Quez is that he has that kind of speed that defenses have to worry about. They got to play differently when he's out there, which I don't know. Maybe it's a little true.
I mean, I think defenses are a little more concerned with Devontae and AJ.
You think so?
I think so. And I don't think Quez has shown, even if defenses are doing anything different, I don't think Quez has shown that he can take advantage of it. And I don't know. I just don't see it. And I was bullish on him coming into the season, but just don't see it.
All right, let's move on to tight end, Rube. Obviously, Dallas Goedert is going to be out for a while. I thought he was playing okay the first half of the season. Didn't get involved offensively the way you'd probably want to see, but the offense was working well. And there were times where he showed that yard after catch ability.
Yeah, every time he caught the ball, he ran like he was mad that he wasn't getting the ball very much. He knew, like, I'm not going to get many opportunities, so I'm going to fight for every yard. And he plays that way anyway. But I think the one thing the injury has done, and we've talked about this, they just don't have a ton of depth there. And they have pieces, but they don't have, look, you're not going to have a backup who's as good as Dallas, but they don't really have a guy who can catch the ball and a guy you can rely on. So Stoll's a good blocker. They like him. He plays a lot, but he's not a receiver. Calcaterra, I think, will be back from the concussion, but he's caught like 5 passes in his career. I don't think it's a big loss, and they just don't have a guy to plug in there. I mean, it'll be Stoll. He'll be the next guy in, but it's a big loss.
It is.
And there's Alberto, and we'll see if he gets in the mix at all.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be active. He'll maybe play a little bit, but not much.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, so it's a big loss because, and I know people are going to say, well, they went 5-0 without him last year. Yeah, I think that's not the right way to look at this. You look at what he means to the offense in both the pass and run game. And it's a significant loss, and the good news is it looks like they're expecting to get him back at some point. But in the meantime, not only do you have to fill a tight end spot, but you have to figure out. We talked about the third receiver. Like, they need a third option after AJ and Devontae, because that's normally Dallas. I don't know who that is. It's probably not Jack Stoll, but then we get to the third receiver conversation. Is it DeAndre Swift out of the backfield? They need someone else to kind of shoulder the load as the third option. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the same guy each week either.
Right. I mean, the only real options are Swift out of the backfield. To me, the only real options are Swift out of the backfield and Julio. Like, I don't think OZ has shown me enough that I think he can come in and catch 3 or 4 balls for 45 yards each week. I haven't seen it. I know he did that in Atlanta. And Gainwell's a good receiver. He can catch the ball, but I think they seem to be more. I mean, Brian Johnson seems to be more into throwing the ball to the backs than the Eagles have. They haven't really needed to in the past. And Miles, after that rookie year, was just wasn't a good receiver. So I think that's the best option is some Julio and some Swift, because even when Swift's not running the ball well, I mean, he gets you yards in the passing game, and it's a good way to get the ball in his hands. Seems to see defenders and has a good sense of space when he catches the ball. And even if you just get 4 or 5 yards, you take it. I mean, that's a good run. 5 yards is a good run. So if you get 5 yards in the passing game, you'll take it, certainly.
And that's the one thing about Swift that's a good point. He hasn't been running the ball as effectively, but he has come on as a pass catcher a little bit.
Yeah. What's he got? 30-something catches, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's the best way. It's not ideal. And there have been times where, like, he'll line up in the slot. He's run a couple deeper routes. So they haven't gone well. They haven't paid off, but it's something that's in there. It's in the playbook. So that tells you that they think he can be a little bit of a difference maker in the receiving game.
Yeah, he has 30 for 166 and a touchdown.
Yeah, it's not a ton of yards, but
averaging 5.5.
It's 5.5 yards. So if he was getting 5.5 yards per carry, you'd be happy with it. So you'll take 5.5 yards on 1st and 10. You certainly take it.
Yeah, sure. You want to move to the offensive line? It's been pretty impressive. We'll knock on wood here, but they've been relatively healthy on the O-line. We know Cam Jurgens has missed 5 games, but and we know Lane came out early in one of them, but all the other 4 starters have started every game this year.
Yeah, and it's funny because Lane and Kelsey are the guys you're concerned about because they're older, and then Cam, who's 23, is the guy that got hurt. I mean, Lane and Kelsey have been great. I think Jordan's been really good. Dickerson's been really good. I mean, they've all been good, and they play well together, which is another reason the problems running the ball have been confounding, because with this O-line, they should be better. But I think they've been good. I think they've been really, really good. They're scoring a lot of points. I mean, they're averaging 27, 28 points a game. Um, I feel like Jalen's not getting hit or getting pressure as much as last year. Some of that might be just being quicker in the pocket. I'm sure that's a big part of it. And you don't see him just standing there and taking sacks. But yeah, it might be the last. These might be the last, 8 games that we see Jason Kelce play football. So appreciate it while you can.
Yeah, he's still playing at a really high level.
Really, really good. Yeah.
It's amazing. You're right. Like individually, all these guys are playing really, really well. I think Landon's better than he was last year.
Yeah.
He was a Pro Bowler last year. I think Jordan's better than he was last year. I don't know if Kelce and Lane are better, but they set the bar so high that like they're still playing at that level. And I thought before he got hurt, Cam Jorgens looked really good.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be big getting him back. And I thought he was going to be back last week, and they played it conservatively like they do. Once they get that full group back, it'll be good timing with some of the, especially with the Niners coming up. Mm-hmm. Against that defense, having that O-line at 100% is going to be big.
Yeah, it certainly will be. All right, you want to take a break, and then on the other side, we'll get into some defensive stuff?
Yeah.
All right, let's do that.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table.
All right, Rube, let's start with the defensive line. They got my highest grade from the midterm grades, which isn't a surprise. I mean, they've been very good most of the season. Obviously, the Eagles have the number 1 run defense in the league, but these guys also get after the passer.
Did you mention what the O-line's grade was? Or
I didn't. The O-line came out of the B+.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I mean, the D-line it's been really the heart and soul of the team. It's been the one area that has been just consistent week in and week out. And I mean, they've needed them because they've had so much, just so many moving parts, so much inconsistency in the secondary and a linebacker as far as guys coming in and out. So they're deep. We've seen guys like the way Jordan Davis has improved has been really, really encouraging. Still a young guy. Obviously, Jalen Carter has been just a flat-out beast. But even guys like Milton and Fletch and BG have quietly been really good and really solid, even if their numbers might not be what they wanted. They play really well together. And they're really good at the end of games. We've seen Reddick and Sweat especially. Like, they might not get a pressure for 3 quarters, but at the end of games, they're just relentless. It's a fun group, and there's great personalities. They play well together. That's the thing that just with all these different combinations, guys coming in and out, they just always play well together. It's an impressive group.
Yeah, and I mean, Sweat and Reddick they're fantastic. They might be the best duo of edge rushers in the league. I think Sweat is finally starting to get his due. It takes a while, but especially for a fourth-round pick. Yeah, it takes a while, but he's getting there now. He deserves it. And Reddick is coming on too. You have those two guys leading the team in sacks, and then Carter. Let's talk about Carter a little bit, because he's dealt with some injuries in the last few weeks, so his pace has tapered off a little bit. But if he can stay healthy down the stretch, like we were talking about him early in the season as one of the best defensive tackles in the league, and I still think that's true.
Yeah, I do too. And I didn't know exactly what to expect when he got here. You heard stuff about about college, but I've been so impressed with his attitude, his work ethic, his his desire to keep getting better, keep improving. He's really responded. And I think that's where the whole culture, I mean, it's an overused word, but if you have BG and Fletch sitting in the same area as you and practicing with you and, at the lunch table with you and hanging out with you, I mean, you're not going to be looking for shortcuts. You're not going to be, you're going to be relentless in your work and your preparation. And we've seen that with him. And, I think he could have been a really good player if he did take shortcuts, but I mean, he really prepares. He's become a real film buff. He's always watching film. He studies his opponents, and that's taken him to another level. And because I mean, there's a lot of guys who he comes in and doesn't do the things he has to do. He could still be a really good player, but he's taken it seriously, and he's followed in the. He's got great leadership and great examples in that room with him, and he's made the most of it. And he's 22.
Yeah, he's unbelievable.
He is.
He's one of the best rookies I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Eagles haven't had a rookie position player make a Pro Bowl in 35 years. It's Keith Jackson.
He's got a shot.
He's got a shot. He needs to stay healthy, but I mean, he gets a lot of pub and a lot of notoriety and a lot of attention. Who was the last defensive player to make a Pro Bowl as a rookie for the Eagles? I looked it up, and I mean, it was somebody in the 60s. So yeah, he's on his way. I mean, I can't wait to see where he goes from here.
And it should be noted that he's playing a position that historically is tough on rookies. You don't see a ton of production from rookie defensive tackles in the NFL. And he did it from game one, really.
Yeah. And Corey Simon is the one exception with the Eagles. He would have 9.5 sacks. I mean, it ended up being his best year. Although he did have 7.5 another year, made a Pro Bowl like in his third or fourth year. But I don't expect that to happen with Jalen Carter. He's just going to keep getting better and better. But you're right. For some reason, it's a position that takes players a little while to excel at and to really get. And maybe that's true with him too. But just he's at a point where that path, like he's just so far ahead of everyone else that he's still really, really good. And it just tells you.
Concept, huh?
I know. I mean. You think of the best Eagles defensive tackles and Fletch, Jerome, Corey Simon. I mean, there's no reason he can't be the best. I mean, maybe Fletcher's the standard. There's no reason he can't be that good, by the time he's done.
Yeah, and he's well on his way. What do you make of Nolan Smith? And he just doesn't play. He just hasn't seen the field very much.
Surprising, disappointing. There's a point earlier in the year where I think it was Sean Desai said, we got to get him more reps. He's got to play more. He will play more. You'll see that. But he hasn't. I mean, he's like 4, 5, 6, 7 snaps a game. So I don't know. I was really impressed with him in training camp. I liked what I saw. He seemed to have some really good pass rush moves and an ability to turn the corner really quickly and get to the quarterback quickly, get low and get around the edge. I just like to see more of it. And Reddick and Sweat's snaps are way up. I mean, it's not really it's a rotation a little bit because those guys aren't playing every snap, but they're playing a lot more than they did last year. It's been surprising.
We have Sweat at 75% this year, Reddick at 73%, Graham at 28%, Barnett at 17%, and Smith at 10%.
Yeah, and when Barnett was inactive last week, I thought, this is our chance to see Nolan Smith get 12 snaps, 14 snaps. It just didn't happen. So, you ask the coaches about it, and they're like, well, we have, who are you going to sit? Well, Derek Barnett for starters. That happened, and he didn't get more snaps. So, I think he's going to have to play.
Yeah,
and
it was also the last game before the bye week, so I understand wanting your top guys to kind of empty the tank, but curious to see what that looks like going forward.
Yeah, I really want to see him play.
Yeah. And I've been asked questions about, can he play off-ball linebacker? I mean, he could, but why?
Yeah.
I mean, why would you do that? In situations, maybe like to get him out there as a pass rusher, you would think about it, but it's not his best position. And surprisingly, Eagles are getting decent play out of their linebackers.
There's your transition. I knew that was coming. I could see it from a mile away. And yeah, their two best linebackers have been Zach Cunningham and Nicholas Morrow. I didn't see that coming. That's been the biggest surprise of the year to me. When they brought in Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham, we thought Miles Jack he got first team reps, and Cunningham's getting third team reps off the bat. And then they just kind of changed places, and Miles retired. I just read something about him that he's doing now. I can't remember what it is, but great guy. I'm sure he'll do well, whatever he does. Nakobe's been a disappointment. Now he's probably out for the rest of the year, I would assume. So you're going to go back to having your two best linebackers play all the snaps. The biggest surprise to me about Morrow and Cunningham is, especially Cunningham, they've both been okay in coverage. They've been okay. It's not their thing.
Okay. Yeah. At times they've been okay. I think that's still where the Eagles are most susceptible.
But they've been better than I expected, really, in every facet. And it's going to be interesting. They're both here on 1-year deals. Look, Nakobe's 22, and it's important to remember, he's a young guy who it didn't go the way anybody hoped this year with the injuries and lack of production, but they got some decisions to make at linebacker, because if Howie doesn't keep Morrow and Cunningham, then, who are your linebackers next year? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know if you can go into another year without seeing Nakobe play and expect him to be a starter. All right, Rube, let's finish up the defense with a secondary. They've played 1 million guys, I'm estimating there, but about 1 million, I would say.
17.
It's crazy. And I think the biggest question for me going forward is that nickel spot, because I think we'll see how they play, but we know the safeties are Blankenship and Byard. We know the corners on the outside, we'll see how they play, are Slay and Bradbury. Is it just Roby as the nickel?
I think that's going to be the plan. We'll see how it goes. I thought he played okay. We only saw 55 snaps maybe in the 2 games he played. So yeah, I think, look, we've seen everybody. I think we've seen 8 different guys play in the slot this year, if you include like Zach McPherson going back to training camp and Ovante and a cast of thousands. My biggest question with the secondary is how much of their issues are just all the moving pieces and guys coming in and out, and young guys, Eli Ricks and Mekhi Garner and all these young guys playing, guys who just got here, Josiah Scott. How much is that and the lack of stability, and how much is just James Bradbury's not playing well? He's just flat out having a bad year. He's gone from one of the best corners in the league to, below average.
Yeah, that's the bigger concern, right? Because you expect all these young guys to have communication problems and not exactly know what they're doing, but you need James Bradbury to be a guy you just paid on a 3-year deal.
Yeah, so if I wish I could just say getting 5 guys and keeping them healthy and keeping them out there, Bradbury and Slay and Blankenship and Byard and Roby would solve all the problems, but I'm not sure it will. It'll help, but how much? You're facing some good quarterbacks over the next month. I just don't know. I don't know how much is all the changes and all the young guys playing, and how much is lack of stability, and how much is just guys not playing well. And I think Slay has been a lot better than he's been their best corner, but he's also not the Slay of a few years ago. So it's a concern. I wonder who their corners are going to be. I mean, they can't really cut Bradbury, I think, for till after next year.
Well, it's tricky. They signed him and Slay to 3-year deals. They're really 2-year deals.
Yeah, they're really 2-year deals. I don't get too far ahead of ourselves, but Isaiah Rodgers is out there. We'll see. We'll see about him. He'll be a fun story next year.
Yeah, he's really a nickel, though.
Yeah. But it's yeah. I mean,
they could use him this year. I'll tell you that.
They sure could. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's going to come. Bradbury's got to be better. I think that's the biggest thing in the secondary. With the pressure they get, they shouldn't be. I mean, they shouldn't be this bad. I mean, 19 touchdowns allowed and 4 interceptions. There's only been one other winning team in NFL history through 9 games that had allowed 19 touchdowns and had 4 interceptions, and it's like the '86 Jets. They were 5-4, something like that. So they've overcome it. You're not going to get to the Super Bowl if this secondary keeps playing the way they have. You just won't.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Let's talk about special teams real quick. I think they've been – you said linebacker is the biggest surprise. It might be special teams.
Well, I mean, we knew Jake was really good. So I think the new punter has been a little slow start, but he's been pretty solid since he came in. And cover teams for the most part have been solid. The special teams as a whole has just been a lot better than last year. And they've had some early in the year they had some breakdowns here and there, but I give Michael Clay credit. A guy that I wanted fired. I thought he should have been fired. I was actually surprised he wasn't. They've done a good job this year.
Yeah, and they're getting contributions from a lot of young players, like a lot of rookies. So you have Nolan Smith and Keely Ringo, Sidney Brown, Eli Ricks. All these young guys are contributing a lot.
Yeah, and most of those guys have been contributing, been playing on offense and defense too. So it's been a lot for them. But I think special teams is in good hands. They have guys who can run, young safeties and linebackers and corners.
The punter looks okay.
And the punter looks okay. Braden Mann. I forgot his name for a second there. They had so many of them. So were Ty Zentner's like the lowest ranked punter in the league.
Yeah, he's not good.
Yeah. How about Cameron Dicker, speaking of former Eagles special teamers?
Mm-hmm.
He's missed 2 field goals in his career. One was from 53 and one was from 54.
He's good.
I mean, the guy's obviously he doesn't have enough attempts to qualify, but he's got the highest average in history, like with a minimum of like 30 attempts. But he won a game for the Eagles last year, right? Was it Arizona?
Yeah, it was the Special Teams Player of the Week.
Is that right? His only game as an Eagle. I think he was here another week on the practice squad before the Chargers signed him. But Jake's been great. I just need maybe 2 more 50-yarders from him, I think, to win that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. That's another thing that stuck out to me around the league. Like 54-yard field goals are like layups. They're like extra points to these kickers now. It's amazing how guys are making 58-yarders, 59-yarders with room to spare right down the middle. That's become such long distance kicking. I think like 55 yards is like the new 50-yarder. Like, 50-yarder. That's like, you better make 50-yarders.
Yeah, you better. Or you're not going to have a job.
It's like a 70% kick now in the league. 54 yards. It's crazy.
Lastly, let's look at coaching real quick. Overall, I think coaching, they're doing well. Like Nick has these guys playing well. I think there are things to question from each of the coordinators on each side of the ball, but like overall, I think they're doing a fine job.
Yeah, and I mean, I get these fire Desai, fire Brian Johnson tweets all the time. These guys have been coordinators for 9 games, and the Eagles are 8-1 in those 9 games. You can pick apart a play here and a play there. certainly some of Brian Johnson's play calling has been bewildering here and there, but I mean, they're one of the top offenses in the league. They score 30 points a game almost. The red zone's been cleaned up a lot. It's been a lot better over I think the last 3 games, the only two possessions they didn't get touchdowns in the red zone were the 2 fumbles, like at the 5. So that's gotten better. I think they both know what they're doing. I think they're both going to be good coordinators. Some rocky points for both, but that's going to happen with anybody. I mean, tell me a coordinator who came in and, Jim Johnson had like the 19th ranked defense in the league his first year with a lot of great players in 99. I mean, you look at, Frank Reich in 16, people wanted to fire him and Jim Schwartz. And then you look at in 21 with Shane and Gannon, people want to fire them. I mean, they always wanted to fire Gannon, even when he had the number 1 defense in the league. But it takes time. And both these guys, I mean, Desai especially had to come in and learn the personnel. He wasn't here like Brian Johnson. Considering the lack of stability in the secondary and at linebacker, I think Sean Desai's done a really, really good job. I don't care what the numbers say. I think he's navigated.
I think I've been more impressed by Desai than Brian Johnson.
Same. Yeah. I think he's had a bigger challenge. I mean, because the offense has been pretty much intact. Yeah. Secondary sure hasn't. There's guys playing like, it was crazy. They're there for a while. Guys coming off the practice squad, guys they just signed, guys they just found in the World League. Is there even a World League anymore? But yeah, I think Sean's done a really nice job. I would give him. I'd probably give Brian. I'd probably give him both B's. I might give Desai B+, Brian Johnson B- or B.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, but they're going to get better. I would think they're going to get better.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair too. I mean, they're still learning on the job a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, that's all. That was fun to go through the whole team. And just before we end this pod, we'll get into the Chiefs obviously later. Super Bowl rematch. First thought about the Chiefs.
Well, they're winning a little differently than the Chiefs teams we've seen in the last few years. I think Spags has a defense playing really well, better than they have been. They're not scoring as many points, but they're not giving up as many points. They don't have a ton of weapons outside. It's been Travis Kelce, and I listened to Big Red's presser from yesterday, I think it was. He was asked as many questions about Taylor Swift as he was asked about the Eagles. And the only question he was asked about the Eagles had to do with the tush push. And he said, they're good at it. That was his quote.
That's true.
Things haven't changed for Big Red, but the way they play has changed. So it's an interesting, they're not that unstoppable offensive force anymore, but they're playing really well in defense.
Yeah, they are. My biggest thought about this game is how in the world are they going to stop Travis Kelce in the middle of the field, which is where they've been most susceptible. I don't know. I don't think we'll know that until we actually see it on the field.
I would just put Mekhi Gardner on the whole game.
I thought you were going to give a serious answer there.
I couldn't think of a serious answer. But I do think it helps that they don't have a ton of weapons other than him. Mm-hmm. So that'll make it. If they had 2, legit outside threats, now you're like, well, what are we going to do here? They don't have that anymore.
Yeah, you're right. All right. Let's wrap this up. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, you know what to do. Please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. That's it. We'll be back with you later in the week. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.